So welcome to the new episode of All That Jazz. I'm your host Matyash, and I have with me Keira Lani, and she's a Qi-Gong teacher, and she guides healers to help them to achieve their mastery or something like that, as I understood it. Welcome to the show, Keira.
Thank you, Matyash. It's a pleasure to be here. And you did wonderfully with the introduction.
Thank you.
We can share more about what that means so the audience can
Yes, we'll go into it. I'm first interested in a lot of my guests, their stories start with healing, start very young, usually in their childhood. So is that the case for you as well?
It is absolutely. I am very blessed to have been raised by a mother who is a yoga practitioner. So
Oh,
I
wow.
started yoga before I was even born, technically. That's what my mother would say when I say I started yoga very young. She says, "Well, you actually started in the womb." And so I always was pulled to the yoga, and I lost my father very young. I was 5 when my father left his body by his choice, and so that entered me into
Wow.
really
Hold on.
fascination
Is
with.
that, you mean suicide?
Yes, my father
Oh,
committed
wow.
suicide when I was 5 years old, and at 5 I had no idea what suicide was. I really just understood that he knew he was going to die. He came and he said goodbye and he went home and died. I didn't really learn consciously how he died until a few years later, but it immediately sent me into an exploration of what happens when you die. What is death? And because I had been exposed to the idea of meditation and reincarnation,
Mm.
I went into my own personal exploration. And so at the age of 5, I took myself on my first self guided meditation journey. And in this journey, I imagined opening a door at my third eye and walking out and walking through a beautiful garden. And I found along the garden path a tower of light. And it had a spiral staircase. I went up the spiral staircase and I met a light being at the top, an ascended master. And this beaming, white bearded, white robed, white light man just smiled at me as if to say everything is all right.
Mm.
And this guide has been with me all ever since, and probably before.
Wow.
I um, he has come to me in different forms at different times as I have entered more consciously into what does this spiritual journey mean to me, as well as bringing through the gifts that I teach to others.
Wow.
So,
So at age 5, you had already, so nobody showed you, you just kind of intuitively went and were you in pain or were you what was the process? What led you to kind of leave your body?
so it wasn't entirely that no one showed me because, like I said, my mother had a daily meditation practice.
Okay.
So I was aware of that. And she had children's books that talked about reincarnation and meditation that I read. And so this is kind of where the context for it came. And it really was more curiosity because at that age, actually, this was before I was very sad and missed my dad. But
Mhm.
this was before I started to get angry and feel like the betrayal that I felt later in life. When I was at this age, I really was very accepting. And I was curious. I wanted to understand. And so that was what motivated me, was this desire to understand where he had gone. And I wasn't really looking for him. I was looking for an understanding because, at such a young age, I was facing my own mortality. I was realizing, oh, I'm going to do this someday. Who knows? This happened so much sooner than I would have expected. He was a very young man at the time. And so I started thinking, well, gosh, if I'm going to have to go if I'm going to be leaving my body, I want to know where I'm going. And of course, I didn't get a very clear answer, but it did bring me a lot of comfort to know that to have an experience of, yes, there is someplace else to go outside of this body and this reality. And really, there's so much more through
Right.
my experiences. I've been able to recognize that again and again.
Would you say that was astral travel, or would you say that was something different?
Hmm, that is an interesting question. I guess you could say it was astral travel. I never looked at it that way at the time because to me it was just meditation. That was the only word I had for it. This is meditation,
Yeah.
and this is how you do it: is you walk out of your body. And so that's very interesting because I have only more recently explored that as the concept of astral travel. I think when I thought about it before, I expected it to be something more dramatic, I guess,
Right.
because like in this practice, all of this was happening, and there's still a part of the awareness in the body, right? In the body is still sitting there on the porch in the sunshine, even as the awareness is going on this journey. And I
Right.
think this is actually an important point, especially for people who may be entering into meditation and expecting it to be something more than what it is. I run across this a lot with my clients and students that they say, oh, I try to meditate, but nothing happens. And
Right. They expect something big to happen,
same
but
thing with
nothing.
astral travel, like when we think astral travel is going to be more dramatic. And so I really encourage people to recognize that meditation is the practice. The experience isn't the goal. The goal is to be in the practice. And this is why I teach a lot of moving meditations and integrating the meditation practice into your life, because this is where it really makes a difference, is when we use these practices as a gateway to engaging with life in a new way,
Hmm.
to engaging with our relationships and experiences from this center of our being rather than from always looking outside.
Right. It seems like a lot of people, especially early on, are very much into what they can get from it and the results and all that. And but you're saying that it becomes like a part of you, like it's a way of life. You're not doing it because you're gonna get something out of it. You're doing it because this is part of who you are, and it helps you stay grounded or whatever it is. It just helps you be um, more you. Because I've heard some people that had a near death experience, and there was one guy that was I think he's kind of famous. He might have been on Oprah or something, and he was saying that he, after his near death experience, that he was meditating every day because he wanted to be closer to that state.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I guess in a way, you are doing it for results because you're getting results. But I think there's different kinds of motivation still within that range, because people just want to, I don't know, become enlightened in a few hours or some like unrealistic expectations. You probably
Yes.
find that a lot.
Yes, and there's a misconception about enlightenment, that enlightenment is a goal. And enlightenment is actually the journey. And this is what I was saying about meditation as well. Yes, there are dramatic results to be received from meditation and and that's why I do the practices that I do, the
Yeah.
movement and breathing practices, is because it enhances my life in amazing ways. And yet every time I've had a really powerful transcendental experience, because I've had many of those flashing light type experiences that people are wanting from their meditation practice. And it's always because I'm showing up consistently and being present with what is and
Mm-hmm.
not actively trying.
Right.
When you try to have a certain experience, then it's unlikely to happen. When you're really present to what is, there is so much magic available, and you
Mm-hmm.
will have powerful results through a dedicated, consistent practice. And you will be experiencing bliss body, you will be experiencing enlightenment, ascension, and yet these are not end goals. There is no true end goal, because if you actually think of like, well, what is the end? That would be the transition into whatever comes after this life. And well, we're here in this body, we're here to have all of the experiences.
Okay, sorry, I was interrupted, but you didn't hear anything. I hope.
Nope, I didn't hear
um,
anything.
um, I want to go back to how do people about the intention for meditation? How do they clear that up so that it's not just something so very unrealistic that they're expecting?
Hmm. Well, this is why I recommend, if you're feeling stuck, if you've been meditating every day and you're feeling stuck, like I'm not getting the results that I want, then I recommend trying different techniques. There are so many different ways in, and I would say this is really how I have kept feeling expanded and more motivated and inspired by my practice, is because I regularly bring in new practices. And because I've trained with so many different teachers at this point, now most of the new practices are things that come to me spontaneously through my practice. And I'm like, oh, I just learned something new today. And it's something that I learned through experience. And so that is one tip, is to try something new. And I really recommend people that get stuck in seated meditation try moving meditations,
Mm-hmm.
breathing meditations, standing meditations, and um, and I kind of want to come back to the breath, because the breath is probably the most important tool that you have that you have with you wherever you go. And the breath is so amazing, because as long as you are living, you will breathe whether you're thinking about it or not, and you can affect your breath. So the breath is actually the only thing that we have both autonomic control and conscious control
Mm-hmm.
in our body. And so in yogic philosophy, the breath is called the penetrating body. The breath is the unifier of the mind, body, spirit, the emotional body, the mental body, the physical body, the spiritual body. All are connected to the breath. And so when we work with our breath consciously, it is an access point for these greater experiences. And then it's also important, because I studied yoga philosophy so young, I have a very deep integration awareness of the fact that the transcendental experiences are not the true goal. The true goal is to know yourself on a deeper level. And
Mm-hmm.
the transcendental experiences will happen if you stay with it.
Right.
They
Uh, d-
they won't they may not immediately happen at will, but the true goal is to really get to know that essence of you. One of my teachers calls it part of you that does not die, and to become aware of to even become aware of that there is a part of you that does not die, that is eternal, that is continuing on. Consciousness does not die, and
mhm.
so it's really more about connecting to that part of you and experiencing yourself as the consciousness. And this is, I think, something that is very elusive for many. And I will say it has been my experience as well. When I first started really dedicating to my meditation practice and having these amazing experiences, then I'd be like, well, why can't I reproduce that every time that
Right.
I practice? And it's because those experiences are there to help you develop, and they're not the purpose of it. They're something that is there to help you have the epiphany, the awakening to a new level of experience, if that makes sense.
Right. So it's kind of like you think the main purpose of spiritual practice is spiritual growth in a way, to become more loving, to become to go higher on the scale of consciousness, as it were. I don't know if you're familiar with David Hawkins' work. He had like a map of consciousness where there would be a level of courage, which would just be start of the positive, and below it would be fear, guilt, shame, and all that, and above it would be like a reason, acceptance, neutrality, love, unconditional love, enlightenment. And he said at the time that like the scale would go to from 0 to 1,000, and he said that on average, um, people would go 5 points up.
Hmm, interesting. I have
Yes.
I have looked at a lot of these hierarchical models, and my opinion is that that is largely just a way for the human brain to understand. And I would say it's not necessarily hierarchical. For me, the purpose is to be able to engage with life more consciously. And so at first I was very much in my own journey, I was very much in that realm of, okay, this shows me that I'm at this particular level.
Right.
And and at that time I was also judging myself if I experienced emotions such as anger or frustration, and that was actually a block to me truly engaging with life
Right.
at a higher
Maybe you're
level.
trying to force it. You were trying like, oh, I'm having this emotion, but I'm beyond this, and then you were like, you were not accepting it. You were like trying to reject that part. like I think there's a term, spiritual bypassing. Like people are trying to be all nice and all that, but then they're actually negating themselves because they're not dealing with stuff, and they're in psychoanalytical analytical terms, they're like suppressing their emotions, basically. Is that what you're talking about? Like kind of negating yourself?
Yeah, that's definitely that definitely is what I'm talking about. And it's not like the spiritual masters, it's not that they don't have these emotions, it's just that they move through them with such skill that they don't show them, they don't react to them in the way that many of us do. And so to allow yourself to engage with your emotions, even and maybe especially the ones that you may judge as negative, is an important piece to really learning to skillfully engage in your relationships and with the world in general. And so I think to put it on a hierarchical structure is a little bit one-sided, because this creates a lot of frustration for people when they say, well, gosh, I made it so far and here I am totally enraged again. What is wrong with me? And so it's really important to recognize, oh, I have made it so far that I'm able to witness myself in a new way. How
Mm-hmm.
cool is that? How cool is it that I can now look at this sudden flare up of rage in a completely different context? And oh, that's right, I have tools to express myself in a way that is not harmful to others, because that is really the goal, is to be able to interact and engage in a way that is authentic, dynamic, and non-harmful.
Okay, you said a lot, and I've always had trouble with the word authentic because I think that means a lot of things. For me, it can be it can be very negative because if somebody's like being authentic, I'm just telling this person what I really feel and all that. I don't know. I feel like it's a word that can be misused in a lot of ways, you know. And so so to get the terms right, what would be your definition of authentic?
um, True to who you are, true to yourself at a deeper level, to who you're truly here to be. um, and rather than, generally we're taught to put on a happy face, and fake it till you make it is one that I heard a lot
Yeah,
when I was young.
yeah,
And I notice what happens is we don't connect with each other well when everyone is doing that. We're all, and
faking it.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, everybody faking it. And so I will use an example from my group program that I'm teaching. I teach a year-long group program,
Mm-hmm.
and one of my clients came to me in a private session and she said, I'm not sure if I fit in with this group. Everyone is just talking love and light all the time. They're all so accomplished in their businesses.
Yeah.
And so in the next class, I invited everyone to share their challenges and celebrations. I didn't want to say share your challenges and be like, you have to have challenges to share. That's
Right.
why I said, what challenges or celebrations can you share? But by saying challenges or celebrations, I was putting in the context, let's share something that's really going on in our lives so that we can have a deeper connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and so I agree with you. I have seen people say, oh, well, I'm being authentic, so I'm just going to spew a toxic load onto you.
Yeah.
And that's not what I'm saying. But yet, when we can share and be vulnerable. So I think vulnerability is a big part of authenticity, because there's a lot of fear of judgment. If I share with you that my life isn't perfect, then you might not want to be around me, because I think you only wanted to be around me for what good I can offer, is
Right.
one train of thought that we might have. And what actually happens when we share, wow, this is what happened in my life, and I'm still struggling to find my balance within this, then people actually go, oh, wow, now I feel more comfortable sharing what's going on for me, because you were willing to share with me what's going on for you.
Right.
And then we get to say, oh, yeah, we're in this together. We're all having this human experience. No one escapes challenges in this life. No one just rides through. And that's what I was saying about the people that we would look at as ascended masters, who pretty much are always just beaming love and light, and really
Right.
are always beaming love and light. They are they will, if you listen to them talk, they will speak to these human challenges, and they will speak to them from their experience, because they are also in this human form in order to bring through ways of coping with the human experience. And so it's not that they don't have the human experience, it's that they have the skills, like I said, to move through it in a different way. And that's
Right.
really my goal with the practices that I do for myself and that I teach to others, is to have the skill to move through life's challenges with ease. And if we deny that they exist, and then we are unlikely to really get anywhere. We're
Mm,
actually kind of like separating, and there are a lot of people that come to me thinking there's something wrong with the physical, and we're supposed to transcend the physical and just be the spirit, because that's our true essence, is the spirit. And yet there's a reason that we're here in this physical body at this time.
yeah.
And there are things that we can't do in the spirit world that we can do here in the physical body. And so when we really honor what we can do in the physical, that actually allows us, that's what allows us to transcend into these dramatic spiritual experiences where we can do things that really could be classified as magic.
Magic. Ooh. So you're talking like miracles and stuff. I don't know if you're
Yes.
aware, but the Catholic Church has a apparently a standard for to get to somebody. I don't know what do you call it, certified a saint or declared a saint. That's called declare. It's you have to, after they die, they have to prove three miracles medically. So somebody prays to this person that died, who they think is a a saint, and they pray to him or her, and then they get a miracle or healing or something, and then three of those, three different people, three separate people, and then they get confirmation. Basically,
Ah,
is that
see.
what you're talking about? Like,
Very interesting.
yeah.
I like that. Uh, I I have definitely experienced I have definitely experienced connecting to my loved ones on the other side of life and receiving miraculous occurrences,
Hmm.
very, very much in a personal level. I don't know if they would qualify in the Catholic Church. I'm not fully familiar with how that all works, but I'm what I'm actually really speaking to is the fact that we are multidimensional beings. We are simultaneously living here on Earth in this physical plane and in other realms, which people people often describe these as like, oh, on Sirius or like in the stars. And I'm not sure, like from my experience, that that is necessarily what it is. That is one way to look at it, to
Right.
experience it. But there definitely are multiple layers to this reality.
Right, to existence. Like some people can see spirits or whatnot that are around, and some people can't. Like I've never seen anything like that, but there's people that see. So it seems like there's a reality, physical reality that you and I can see, but that there's something beyond it. But it's also in this general area, but there's something, things that we can see, let's say, and that's
Right.
kind of freaky.
Yeah, and the ancient wisdom practices have like similar hierarchies to these layers of reality. Like you were talking about astral travel, and they may say, okay, it's great that you can go to the astral planes, but
Hmm.
ultimately you want to transcend all of these levels of reality to be completely free. And and so this is what I'm talking about more so, is that actually, in my experience, to be able to transcend the physical, to be able to do things like astral travel or multidimensional travel, or to become aware of the multidimensional self that you are, to simultaneously experience this conversation and the presence of my Hawaiian auntie, for instance, or my beloved sister who has passed, or my tree friends who speak to me, um, is really like, it really doesn't look any different from the outside. It really is, and it really is often an internal um, journey, and yet
Right.
and yet we can affect this reality by becoming skilled with holding our multidimensional reality. And so when I used the word magic, um, I was speaking of things like magical manifestations. Yes, miracles is another word for that, where you can, a lot of people right now are striving to figure this out. Like, how do I do this?
Manifest money.
How do my intention and then have some new client show up in my business, or even more,
Yeah.
like a check in the mail that I didn't know where it was coming from. Um, and it actually does take both, and this is where a lot of people fall, get struggle and get lost from their goal, is because they think, oh, I just need to sit on my meditation cushion and visualize and intend. But actually we need to set the intention, create the vision, and then follow the guidance of
Yeah.
what our
Yeah.
actions are in the physical world.
Right.
And that's how the magical manifestation
I
occurs.
I saw that the same similar type of advice in Florence Sin, I think is her name, a New Thought author. She wrote a book called "The Game of Life" and how to play it, and she was said to say an affirmation and then basically set an intention, but say it out loud, but then to follow any hunch and then to follow it faithfully. It seems to be the same as you're saying. Um, I want to get to you mentioned trees. So the connection of nature and like for example, I have a purring cat here, and she likes to she's kind of just
Aw, he's all melted on you. How sweet.
yeah, she's uh she's getting pretty big now. So what is the okay, let's start with trees. You said so are trees aware that there's people when I go in the forest that I am there?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So the trees have been speaking to me for more than 20 years now, consciously. I believe they were before, and I just wasn't aware of it because the forest was my playground growing up. And so I was always connected to the trees, and I always would talk to them, and in the sense of like, oh, thank you for being here, and just expressing gratitude towards the
Mm-hmm.
tree. Um, but when I was in my early 20s, one of my beloved family trees decided to reveal the connection on a deeper level. And this tree, I believe I shared this story with you previously, but I'll share it for our audience here. This tree, my mother named Grandpa Cedar, and she would visit this tree almost every single day. And at this time, when the tree spoke to me, my mother was in Hawaii, and I went to visit the tree myself.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a family ritual of just hugging the tree. And so I just went to hug the tree and smell it and breathe in the beautiful cedar aroma. And it felt like the tree was grabbing me and holding me, pulling my energy from inside my belly into the trunk of the tree. and it felt like the tree didn't want to let me go.
Hmm.
And so I said to the tree, Grandpa Cedar, please look out for my mother way over there across the ocean in Hawaii. And I visualized her sitting on the beach in Hawaii. And then I said, don't worry, we'll stay connected. And I gently withdrew my energy and went back to my little cabin in the woods. And the next morning, I sat in meditation and I sent my awareness back to the tree. I wanted to see if we were really connected. And immediately, I had an experience of the tree showing me a global network of communication amongst the trees, which felt like I was floating in a web of light. And information was just kind of running through this web of light. I wasn't really listening to what it was saying, I was just aware of it. And then later, I shared this story with my mother, and she said, whoa, I was wondering why Grandpa Cedar came to me when I was sitting on the beach yesterday. And so this was kind of the entry point into my exploration. I later learned that there is scientific evidence of tree communication.
Hmm.
There is a mycelial network, which they call the brain of the forest, where the mushroom roots connect the roots of the trees, and the trees actually share information and nutrients through their roots. And my experience is that they're also communicating through the ethers, through the quantum field. And when I came across Greg Braden's work more recently, and he showed an image that they were able to image what the quantum field looks like. And the quantum field, the mycelial network, and the neurons in our brain all share a very similar structure. And so I've come to think of this as the structure of consciousness. And my experience is, to answer your question, that the trees are calling us actively, to those of us who are listening. I have been very specifically guided to gather the the collective of tree connected people of um, I was going to use the word tree warriors because it feels like we're like on a mission, but it's not a war mission. So I was like,
Yeah,
that's quite the right
I
word.
get it.
Yeah. But there's like this powerful calling of the trees to bring us back into connection, and this is for the balance and healing of the planet. And so the trees very much want you there in the forest,
Mm-hmm.
being conscious and respectful and connecting and appreciating the beauty of the forest, breathing in the aromas, receiving the healing benefits of the forest, and connecting with them. And the trees have specifically shown me very recently, within this year, the trees have shown me that they're doing work um, to heal. It was shown to me as if they're reweaving fabric of consciousness and
Really?
where it has
This,
grown thin.
does this have to do with some of my guests are were saying that there's an ascension, there's some kind of event that's going to happen within the next few years. Is this does this have something to do with that?
That's an interesting question. And the trees, like I kind of tuned into the tree consciousness in terms of um, the answer here, and they would say that yes, it's along the same lines, and yet that's a little bit of the again, like the ascension event is a little bit of a dramatic expression of what's happening here. It's more of something that's been happening for a long time and is continuing to happen. And the reason it looks like an event is because of like the concept of the tipping point. Like once
Right.
people then it actually shifts the whole. And so what the trees were showing me is that because of um, because of mass deforestation and epidemic overconsumption of resources around the planet, there are places where it's harder for the trees to connect with each other around the globe. And so that's why they're asking for human assistance with this reweaving. And the way that they've shown me the most simplified version of how humans can assist with this is just to connect to trees. And
Like
so
touch a tree.
this is twofold. One, to actually visit them physically, and even more importantly, to hold them in your awareness when you're not near them. So, especially if you live in a city or a place where there aren't many trees, if you can make a relationship with even one special tree that has meaning for you, that feels like a meaningful relationship, and then you can connect with that tree when you're in your apartment or in a busy city street, and even just to think of it, to bring it into your awareness, that's the first step to really bringing this unification together. And
Or in
even
another way, to pray for trees, to pray for nature.
sure,
um,
that is also helpful, to be right holding that focused intention that we can be unified. And this is, sometimes they call the quantum field the unified field, and I just said it was the field of consciousness. So the unified consciousness is the goal. And so that's where it is the same as this ascension event that people are
right. But
that
so this signifies that there is an upswing of some kind of that there's a change going on, but it's slow. You're saying, but it seems like now, especially politically and all that, it seems like there's a big change. So, like you said, maybe that's why a lot of people are calling it the event because um how would you say it? Like yeah, there's a point of no return, but we mean this in a good way. Now if something changes, so it's so advanced to the point that we don't really go back, can really go back, and it has its own momentum as well, you know.
Yeah, and this is very true. And it's interesting, the political events. It is very interesting to me because since I've been on this journey since early childhood, and I grew up on the west coast of the U.S., which
Very
is
liberal.
very liberal, which was kind of one of the first hotbeds of this consciousness movement. And so I've had the honor to witness it spreading, because it's very different in the center of the US. It's very different now than it was when I was young. And yet
In what
it's
way?
well, in terms of there being more and more people
Oh
who
yeah.
are on this path of consciousness,
Oh
and this is
right,
around
right,
the
right.
world. This is all around the world. I
Yes.
was using the central U.S. as one example, um, of where they're really it's still not quite there in a lot of places. A lot of people feel very alone. That's why we're utilizing the internet so much, and we're so blessed to be able to connect in this way. Like, you and I are quite distant in space, and yet here we are having this conversation right now. And these types of conversations are happening more and more frequently.
Yes.
And this is part of unifying the consciousness, is for us to share our different experiences and viewpoints with each other. And then people watching are going to say, oh wow, I never thought of it that way, or oh yeah, I had that experience too. And
Yeah.
that it continues in this ripple effect. And yet there's also, and this may be pointing to the sense of an event as well, that there seems to be a massive pushback right now from those who are working underneath the political systems to keep people in a state of mind control.
Are you
And
talking about the deep state, the bureaucrats and all that?
yes, yes, exactly. And because they're really, it's very clear that there are many efforts to keep people in a state of production and consumerism, and towards filling the pocketbooks of a few versus actually unifying as a global consciousness. And
Right,
so it does seem like the more we do choose to break free, to seek our own freedom through following our own truth and doing what our heart and soul is calling instead of what we have been told we should do through our training, as through going through public school systems and watching mass media presentations telling us what we should buy and all of those things. The
right.
more that shift away from that, it seems like there becomes this greater and greater pushback. And so I think this is what I often think of when people talk about the event, because it isn't just and this kind of comes back to that conversation about spiritual bypassing. It isn't just like, oh yeah, the more of us awaken, the more beautiful and the more joyful. I mean, that does happen, and we can create these joy bubbles for ourselves. And then actually that's when the challenges come in. And this is the same thing that happens in your personal meditation practice, from what I've experienced myself and with others, is that once you actually start to have these transcendental beautiful experiences, then all of a sudden life challenges come in and
Yeah,
test you to say, oh well, okay, that's great, so how are you going to deal with this now?
right. Seems like there's I've had that experience as well, where things are going well and all that. You meet I, I went to let's say I went to a spiritual teacher and it was all great, and then a couple months after it was I was in a bad space, and then something happened. I made a mistake, and then something happened that shattered me to the core, and I was like depressed and all that, and it was a hard lesson to learn, and periodically one goes through these things, and okay, I just want to tie up the politics a little bit. How to ask this? Would you agree that the greater state control and the less freedom people have is more of a let's say an old paradigm, um, and because people don't realize sometimes that the greed of the government is still greed, the greedy for power. So that's force, and trying to force you, like on Facebook and Twitter, like trying to silence one part of party but not the other. Seems like they're trying to people like so this is what's coming up now, is that certain factions don't want certain things to happen, don't want they don't play but the Queensberry rules, so they want to make it so that their view goes forward first. And so, do you think this is what's being challenged now? And do you think it's going to be a successful challenge?
Well, so me personally, I believe that we each have to claim our own freedom. I'm and I used to be more of a political activist when I was young, thinking, oh, we have to change the system from within, and that's how we're going to do it. We're going to
Right.
convince our elected officials to vote for the things that we want, and
Give me an example. I'm
uh,
curious.
give an example. Well, the big issue out here, where I live, is the forests, deforestation, clear cutting, logging. That was the big one for me when I was young. Was stop cutting down all these trees,
Yeah, we're
and
not
then
surprised.
yeah, yeah. So that was so I got very disillusioned, and definitely in terms of like right now we're in this crazy presidential election here in the U.S. that is just mind blowing how much like blatant corruption is happening right in front of our face.
Mm,
And so I got very disillusioned about trying to affect things through political routes, through any version of political routes. That's just like me personally. I feel like I can make more of a difference by helping people claim their own freedom.
yeah, I think that's
We have
change
to
the
do
world one by one.
and we have to do it regardless of what our government does.
Yeah,
So ultimately at the end of the day, you can talk about like whether you're for Trump or Biden or neither, and ultimately at the end of the day it doesn't really matter who our president is, who our elected officials are. I mean, yeah, okay, yeah, I know it does in a lot of ways it does. Okay,
hmm,
I'm
okay.
making a
Um,
broad statement here.
yeah, yeah, I agree that in the sense that the value of a country is its people. The better the people, um, um, let's say hypothetically, if you had a country of mostly saints, even the Soviet Union would run okay. But given that this is not the case, what
Yeah.
was I gonna say? So yeah, given that this is not the case, then there is certain there's certain value that I give to the government, in so far that a certain government can be very wasteful and can curb the certain freedoms of the people have. Um,
Oh yeah, no, and it does make it. I didn't mean to discount the fact that the way that the government can make a huge impact on your life, and it does, like, and that's being shown very clearly here in the U.S. right now.
well, okay,
And
so let's
I-
just
so, so
clear it
let's like
up.
shift that a little bit, because that statement, it's true. It wasn't quite it.
Right. Okay.
Explaining what I was trying.
Do you want to go into the prediction business and predict something? Because it's around the corner now, 2 weeks. Um, so it's Trump or Biden, or yeah, and so who would you like to win, and who do you think is gonna win? That's a two-part question. If you want to answer that, if not, that's fine.
That is funny. I'm not sure that I want to go into the prediction business in any regard, because that's a funny one. I get asked to do predictions for people a lot, and there is a lot of free will involved here. And
Yeah,
this is actually what I'm seeing is so crazy right now, in terms of, like I said, the blatant corruption. Like, fake ballot boxes are showing up where
yeah.
people ballots are not being counted, and it seems like this is primarily the Republican Party that is doing that. And so that is just, like I said, mind boggling. Like, I'm just like, whoa, that's so weird. Like, I
Wait,
don't
wait,
know.
hold on. You've only come across stories where the Republican Party was doing it.
That is what I have seen reported, and
Okay.
there's
I've
so
seen the
much.
opposite. I've
You've seen
seen
the opposite.
Yes, yes. I've seen there was a story in Minnesota where a guy was taking a video of on his private Snapchat, but then somebody leaked it where he had 100 ballot box or more, and he was throwing them away or something. But anyway,
throwing
okay.
throwing away all the ballots, or throwing away just the Republicans or just the Democrats? Because everyone I've heard of, they've been throwing away the Democrats and submitting the Republicans, but they could be going both ways. I don't really know. And this is actually, for me, this is the big problem, is that the way our political system is set up is creating divisiveness, and it's creating this. And this is why I don't like to even say, oh, I'm for Trump, I'm for Biden, because because I don't like the divisiveness that's happening in my political system and in the political system that I'm under right now. And I don't really take ownership of it. I I have seen for so many years now this it's kind of like a drama of like, okay, this side or this side, and I'm for the people. I'm for unification. I want the Trump supporters and the Biden supporters to look in each other's eyes and see how they are more similar than different, and to put aside their differences and unify their efforts towards actual greater good for all. And I don't see that happening either way. Um, I I will, and like I said, because of that, I don't engage much with the
Yeah.
politics in the political realm, because I'm really more about unifying us as humans. And I know a lot of people on both sides of this issue, and they're all very dear to me. And I also know some people that are like, I'm voting Green Party because then maybe we can get out of this two-party politics. And other people are saying, well, it's not the time for that because we need Trump out of office. And I I don't really I do my best not to engage.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it.
I do see a lot of just baffling actions by our current president that I'm like not even sure where he's getting the ideas that he gets, and so I don't feel like we're in great hands. So I will say that much. I don't feel like we're in great hands like some people do. And
Yeah. Well, I'm a I had I was expecting him to win last time, and uh, primarily I liked him because of the ISIS issue. I thought that there was an important thing, and he took care of that. And but yeah, so I see that the divide, even in the spiritual community, because a lot of people are like, oh, how can you like Trump because he's such a this and that. But I think the level of discourse for sure can be held, because then there's a lot of personal attacks, and like you said, the unification is what's important. But I think there will always be a sense of, even if we both have good intentions, I think sometimes how you get there is different, and that's why I think politics is there. And unfortunately, a lot of times politics is war. To quote the
yeah.
great Winston Churchill, in war you can die only once, but in politics many times. Seems to be true. So let's I want to end on a more positive note of so your Qi-Gong is so that's also Qi-Gong as well. It's part of the, is it Tai Chi, or because I'm not, I often confuse Tai Chi with Qi-Gong, and that's quite different, right?
So Qigong is really the grandfather of all martial arts, and so they're different, but they're not so different. So the difference between Qigong and Tai Chi is Qigong is entirely about balancing the systems, and so qigong practices tend to be very simple and repeated, and focused on mindfulness with the breath, which Tai Chi also has the slow mindful movement with the breath. Tai Chi tends to be very complex forms that don't repeat very much. And so, and they often are very long forms that don't repeat very much. And so I am certified in a couple of Tai Chi forms. One of them is called Tai Chi Easy because it's kind of like Tai Chi done in a way like Qigong.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is a more complex form that and that is not repeated but continues through a series of movements. And so that's
So,
the main
which one is
difference.
more energy based, or are they both energy based?
They're both very energy based. Qigong is going to be more putting you into a deep meditative state where you're listening to your body awareness and really expanding your consciousness. And Tai Chi is going to really encourage neuroplasticity. It's going to be really good for your brain development because of this remembering what the next movement is. So it's going to keep you a little bit more in your thinking brain, unless you get it so well integrated into your body memory that you're then able to release that thinking and just flow with it.
Mm-hmm.
So in my work, I primarily use qigong, in terms of the fact that my work is more about connecting my clients to their innate gifts, to their true wisdom. And the qigong movements really get us into our body and out of our mind and help us to connect. It's also Chinese medicine talks a lot about the Tai Chi as the balance, the symbol that most of us think of as the yin yang symbol is actually called the Tai Chi, and
Oh, really?
this,
Wow.
um, and this is different than Tai Chi exercise. It's Tai Chi means supreme ultimate, and it is about that balance. And so the way the Chinese medicine looks at it, the energy, the yin energy that is heavy and dense and cold, the earth energy comes up through our body, and the heaven energy that is the fiery, bright, hot, fast energy comes down through our body and blends together into the energy of life, or they call it the energy of man sometimes, or the energy of life.
Right.
And
Then some
um,
people have more of one than the other. Some people more yin than yang.
so some people do express more of one or the other quite often. And
Yeah.
so that's really what the practices are about, is balancing your energies and clearing your central channel so that you can have this strong connection, so that you can always be overflowing with energy and only giving from the overflow, so that you can be in this skillful, balanced, dynamic engagement with life that we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And it really turns on the inner healer within the body, because we all have innate healing capacity within our body. And so we can also talk about what it does scientifically, because there are very scientific evidence reasons for why our body heals because we do qigong practices. And there are many different layers to it, because just to do mindful movement with the breath puts you into the parasympathetic nervous system reaction. It turns on the vagus nerve, which turns off the stress response, turns on the rest and
Mm-hmm.
digest, and your body naturally heals. And then there are deeper levels of medical qigong therapy where we can connect more specifically to your energy field, to your meridians and organs, and
Right.
tune
I
into what needs to be cleared and balanced and re-energized.
I saw a video once where in a documentary called Voyage to Betterment, and it was like this video was a scan of a tumor, like a live scan, and there were three qigong practitioners, and they were disappearing the tumor through the energy, and they were also saying something as well, like they were um, I don't know what they were saying, but maybe that's part of the Qi-Gong practice that they were practicing in this clinic. But apparently
Yeah.
that clinic is not open anymore in China. But I don't know if I don't know why they close things like that, because if things work like this is like tremendous,
Yeah, well, this is would get us back into political conversations
right?
because that's definitely, and China, the lineage that I carry, or one of the, I actually have a couple of medical qigong lineages that I carry, but one of them um, is an American man who studied for about 20 years in China, and he recorded all of this information to give back to the Chinese people because their government was not allowing them to practice qigong. And I'm aware of that video that you're referring to,
Hmm.
and and what they're saying is a very important piece of it. They're saying in that video, they're saying wasa, 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 and what it means is it is done. And
Mm.
so they, what they were actually doing, like the most important piece that we can take away from what they were doing, is that they were holding a shared vision of that tumor is already healed, that tumor is already dissolved. And so they weren't like, now we're dissolving it, now we're taking this out. They were,
Right.
it is done, it is
They were
done.
manifesting,
Yeah.
basically. They were
Mhm.
disappearing it. Yeah,
Exactly, exactly. And
that is
so
really
that
cool.
it is a
That's
very,
magic. That's magic. Some people would say that's magic. Some people would say that's fake. But then I think this goes not only in the political, but in the dogma, the science dogma, that also it's in medicine, which is a lot of it is only what is measured or the way we've done things is real. And these woo-woo things that they call, the alternative therapies, they can't be real. And but I think in the future there'll be a more holistic style where we will use the Western along with the Eastern, along with the other new styles that we develop. So we all one in the one clinic, hopefully.
that is happening.
Oh, there is.
There are integrative medicine clinics where they're bringing back the ancient wisdom medicines alongside the modern technology medicines, and discovering new ways of healing through that process of blending them. And that's really why I like to bring a lot of science into my teachings, because there you really can find scientific evidence for the reason that these things work. It's not just all hocus pocus. And I think it's really important to bring that in. And of course, there will be people who say, like, one of my sons is very much a naysayer. Unless you can prove it with double blind studies and
Yeah, of course.
then it's not real. And so there will always be those people, and yet the experiential evidence is overwhelming. And and so this is where we get to choose which path we follow, each one of us. And this is why, like I said, I'm more about bringing people together to see the ways that we are um, here in this together. We are all in
Right. I
this
think
together.
a lot of it is personal experience. I think sometimes when people have a personal experience, they wouldn't say, this is a silly example, but nobody would say, I need to prove through a double blind study that I love my mother or something like that. That's a ridiculous statement, but you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
uh it's a personal experience that, a lot of studies can be approved this way or another. So
And that actually, there's like a flip side to that, because it's funny, I work with so many clients who struggle with their relationship with their mother. It's like, I love my mother, and she drives me crazy, right? And
Right.
it's like that's also a very common shared experience. And so we don't say, when someone says, oh well, this is what helped me with when I was struggling with my relationship with my mother, we don't say to them, oh well, can you prove that that really works? Can you like give me a scientific study that your method works? And it's like, well, no, but you can try it and it might work for you because it worked for me. And I think um, that's kind of a more fun way to approach the scientific experience of life. I kind of feel like I'm my own science experiment, and I invite others to be your own science experiment,
That's it.
see what works for you, and try new things and have an open mind
That's
because
it.
you might
If
be surprised.
Right. There's a quote from the Bible that says, "If you seek, you will find." But then, if that's true, then the opposite is also true. If you don't seek, you will not find. If you don't test things, you can't really begin to see if things are really true or not, unless you really give it a go and not just like dabble or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So, where can people find your work? The tree gong and the healing things that you teach. Where can they find you?
So I am on Facebook as Keira Lani, Tree Gong Healer. I'm also Tree Gong Healer on Instagram. I have a YouTube channel that's also Keira Lani, Tree Gong Healer. And I have a website that is called practiceselflove.com.
Nice. I'll try to put them all in on below wherever you're watching this or listening to the podcast. I'll put that. And yeah, the cat seems to have still sleeping. Yeah.
She's such a sweetie.
Yeah.
Love it.
All right. So very nice to have you on the podcast. Is there anything else? I think we went through a lot of things. I oftentimes forget how well we even actually COVID. We didn't talk about COVID. You
Oh
know?
no, we didn't talk about COVID.
It's I think a lot of it is fear based. When people start, the immune system is very important, right? And if people take care better of themselves, they will get over it quickly, right? That's my theory.
Yeah, this is true of all illness. And I am very much not interested in things like flu shots because I believe that we need to we need to take care of our own microbiome in our own body, and then we will be protected because we have, like I was saying, we have that inner healer. And I
Mm-hmm.
also believe very strongly that we as humans, this is such a big part of my work, we are meant to share our breath. We are meant to connect and touch each other. And I believe that when humans are given the gift of being trusted, that they can be trusted in most cases to protect each other. And so I'm not of the mind of the mandates to keep us protected. I
Right.
think
Vaccines
that is
or
vaccines,
lockdowns and
all of these things. Like, I'm not seeing it working too well for us
yeah,
here in our country. I'm not sure what it's like where you are, but I'm not seeing it functioning well, and I'm seeing a lot of side effects coming through, and I'm totally willing to respect my friends and loved ones who would like me to wear a mask in their presence. I'm not someone who says no, I won't wear a mask ever because it's wrong. I don't see it as the solution myself.
right.
I feel like they're like what you're saying is much more true, that humans should be given the tools to take care of themselves and each other, and then
Yeah,
most of them will. The ones who are malicious and hurtful are actually the outliers, and then they get focused on as being like look out, everyone could be the one who will put you in danger. Anyone could be the one that will put you in
Right.
danger.
On a positive note, I saw this graph which said while more people are getting infected, the death rate is getting a lot lower than before. So maybe people are getting more immune to it, or I don't know what it is, but that's a good development.
That is good to hear. Yes, it is. And there's also that there's also a thought train of like, is this part of the ascension process?
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe it speeded up the process because people needed to stay home and they watched a lot of things, and maybe they changed their minds about a lot of things in the past 6 months.
Mhm. Yeah,
Maybe.
that I think that is true. I think that there have been very obvious benefits to people being slowed down a little bit.
Like the environment, yeah.
The environment, for example, and so yeah, there are a lot of layers to the conversation around COVID that we could we
I
could have
know.
a whole other conversation about it.
So your main message basically is people to try to meditate.
My main message, let's leave people with like a clear message,
Yes,
because I would say, um no, that wouldn't be my main message. My main message would be, um find the tools that are going to help you connect to who you truly are, and bring your gifts to the world. So many people hide when instead of bringing their gifts to the world because self-doubt, fear of
hmm
judgment. And so my main message would be that you, whoever you are watching this, are a precious gift to this world. So can you receive the gift that you are and share it with others? That's going to be the best thing you can possibly do with this precious gift of life that you get to enjoy while you're here in this human body.
and if you're not a gift to the world, yeah, just stay in the house. Stay out of trouble.
Out of trouble.
All
Um,
right. And there she is, Keira Lani. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Everybody, thank you for watching or listening. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.